Welcome back to Making It Awkward. I'm your host, Jessica Wilson. Today, it's a literary journey. I'll share a few ridiculous yet laughable moments in my journey to writing and publishing. It's always been ours, rewriting the story of Black women's bodies. Alison Pill is back for this episode as she was along for the ride for one of the most awkward moments in marketing and publicity history.
And I stopped performing politeness in any way and just laughed and giggled. Very helpful, professional.
At one point, I remember looking over to you as you're laughing, as I'm trying to answer, this question. And I'm like, I give you a look and you're like, I'm sorry, I can't stop thinking about that doll.
Yeah.
Like, I can't. Yeah. It's awkward. Writing the book is one of the greatest projects I've ever completed. I gathered stories from Black folks, including Lexi, my guest in the earlier episode about neurodivergence. She shared how her restriction wasn't experienced as an eating disorder. It was simply a tool to win. It made sense as a Black Division I gymnast because as her body size decreased, her event scores increased. I also had a conversation with 3 Black fat activists and friends of mine, Ifashina, Chef Fresh, and Shayna, who you met in the episode about romance novels and whose photo graces the cover of It's Always Been Ours. The 4 of us talked about the performance of respectability, our chronic illnesses, and Black joy. After writing the manuscript, it left my hands, and that's when it started to get weird. First step was the copy editor, a white woman who really enjoyed the book and wrote me a very personal letter telling me how much it meant to her. Alison reenacted this letter for you so you can enjoy it in all of its glory. It begins...
Dearest Jessica Wilson, I must say that I, a cishet white woman, emerge from this assignment with an entirely enlightened perspective on the experience of Black/women/bodies/food/size/identities/health realities. Thank you for this. Saying it was a privilege to be witness to these realities sounds too, well, what? Of course it is, to use your phrase. But there we have it. I witnessed in the most neutral and at the same time most non-neutral way I could. I grew up fascinated by my mother's New England childhood mammy, 1930s. Her name was Geneva. If asked to name my top 3 early childhood memories, Geneva would be one. I have only one faded photo of her. She was shiny jet black, a huge towering woman who had to enter doors sideways to fit through. Aproned, red checkered kerchief, gold hoop earrings, kind, but not maternal. She arrived one day with a large wound across her neck. Her husband had tried to slit her throat. Whenever I visited my grandparents, there were children's library books, a little present, and a pickaninny doll, whom my mother had named Cheerio. That says it all, right? Waiting for me on the green velveteen Victorian fainting couch. I inherited Cheerio. I love her. Even as a little girl, I was always aware that she represented something more than the archetype white culture assigned to her, something with a very other side. I can properly witness for that other through my relationship with her. And now, through your book. And thank goodness I work alone in my cozy cabin, because if I worked around other people, I would have been told to pipe it down a whole lot of notches as I laughed out loud near continuously for the 10 whole days I spent copy editing your book, still massaging my aching jaw. I wish you all good things, whatever that looks like for you.
For me, that letter is 90% laugh, 10% cry and 100% awkward. But also, I'm glad she enjoyed the book. Sharing that letter with my friends was delightful. Sharing it with my Black therapist was just as fun and necessary. And that was just the first stop in this trip to Bizarro Town. I wanted to share the story of my book writing process for a long time. Many people are surprised that I didn't ask to write the book. I was asked to do so by the woman who became my editor. I vacillated about it for a long time, eventually deciding that most of my work was with individual clients, and that a book could reach thousands of people who didn't have access to care or clinicians who didn't have access to training. This book is a love letter to the community of people who surround me and for all Black people. And the writing and publishing of this book led to more emotional meltdowns than I can ever imagine. My friends and family have listened to me cry into the phone more times than I can even count. I have a single-space page of the list of commitments made to me by my U.S. publisher that went unfulfilled. And after months of therapy, I'm ready to condense that list into one giant sticky glob and keep the lessons learned for marketing my next book. I continue to enjoy sharing the times that I just laughed out loud at the absurdity and awkwardness of it all. And that's what you'll hear with Alison today. A quick note that this episode focuses on my US experience. My UK publisher, Hay House, was truly a dream to work with. I had no notes on every piece of publicity and marketing they had. I simply couldn't understand how they got everything so right until I learned about and then met the Black woman on the team who was in her 20s and supported the publicity and marketing teams. Adwa showed me what a publishing experience could be, and I am forever grateful to her. I hope you enjoy this reflection with Alison. Alison, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to get to debrief with you. So folks will have heard your lovely channeling of a white woman, we'll say, in a sweater in the Northeast. And what was it like to really get into that character for a brief period?
It was fascinating because of the turns that it takes, where it starts off pretty clear, just a lovely letter. Like, okay,
Yeah.
very nice. Very nice to share this. And then the swift turns into traumatic family history and horrible racism and murder. Like, it's not really clear, is shocking. And as someone who is a white woman in the Northeast, often people don't just blurt out those types of things to me. I hear from friends that sort of thing. But it is to, without context, have received that letter and to take the journey that so many people have taken, where you're like, this isn't my business. Why are you sharing this with me currently? That I don't often get to experience. But to live that out, I still can't quite get into the mindset of how societally it makes any sense. You know, just sort of like we live amongst each other. We just kind of go about our days. And why on earth would this be that you felt the need to share?
I appreciate how it ended with the, like, for sure affirmation that she enjoyed reading the book was like a perfect way to make sure that, like, this was all thought to be like helpful feedback and a good thing to say, and that I would appreciate it, right? Because she enjoyed it and just wanted to share all of this in that context.
Yeah, it's a very strange appreciation letter. I can't imagine it being sent in a business context. Like, it's just an absurd thing where someone related in terms of your employer, that this is the sort of letter to send within that context to a stranger. At the same time as it is difficult for me to understand why it would be forwarded along to you.
That part. I forget that part as well. It did not come directly from the copy editor. Yes, to me, there were people in between to see that and be like, cool. yes, this is totally appropriate to pass on as appreciation. That's a good point. I'd forgotten about that one, which took us to a book launch event in New York City, but a little context for how it happened that I was there with you includes a list of bookstores that my publicist was going to reach out to for book stops and talks. And I looked at the list at like 7 or something a.m. on a Wednesday as I was taking the train into San Francisco, and none of the New York bookstores were on there. And I emailed or forwarded the email to you, Amy, and Shayna. And just like, does this make sense? Like, I'm new to book things. Like, does New York's omission make sense? The highest percentage of my Instagram followers are in New York. I just don't understand because I'm new here. What do you all think? And everybody was like, no, this does not make sense at all. And thankfully, you happened to be available then and agreed. A quick add-on here. This is the point at which Alison got involved in emails with my publicist and my editor. She also started reaching out to local New York bookstores, and surprise, once Alison was added to the chat, the conversation got a lot more attention. Alison also volunteered herself to facilitate.
Well, yeah, I was happy to do a book event in this city. I was happy to do a book event with you wherever. And I love New York bookstores, and it felt obscene in the midst of a book tour to leave out New York City, which is full of both people and bookstores.
And Black people. So Venn diagram.
Yeah. Yeah. I was very excited, quite nervous to facilitate a discussion with you. And we also made the choice to get dairy before this event. And there wasn't enough lactate in my world. It actually made sense.
But along in the dairy family, I ended up with a sparkling beverage that the gentleman called a barnyard beverage. Barnyard bubbles,
funk.
I think.
Yeah, barnyard funk level of funkery. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I was really looking for some sort of champagne on book publication, like day moment. And the closest we got was a funky orangish bubbly beverage.
Tasty. I mean, a very tasty dinner, but possibly not the best discussion. Given, like, in terms of the conversation with Stephanie and Libby about, like, show meals,
IBS.
The stress. We kind of failed that. Amateur moves.
There.
But it was a very nice event. There were chairs set up. It felt
the room was full.
The room was full. Yeah.
So we were at Greenlight Books, and my whole publishing team that is in New York was in the front row. The president of the publisher was like in line with you. Every word that you said, there was like emphatic head nodding. And I was like, cool. Like, this person gets what Alison is saying. We're talking about bodies. We're talking about white supremacy. And this person like is fully on board with Alison. And I thought that was great. I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, it felt very strange to facilitate a discussion and to sort of be lending whatever notoriety I have to try and get the book out, and also be facilitating a discussion on a book specifically about Black women's bodies. Not that. And and aware of that dynamic, but also knowing you, being friends with you, having sort of been on some of the ride as you put the book together and suffered through great many sort of challenges in the midst of writing it and figuring out what it was and how it would come to be. Especially when you were coming at it from a place of never having envisioned yourself as an author, and sort of having this request and sort of taking it on in this way that took over your life and was incredibly challenging and a beautiful challenge in many ways, but that wasn't something that you had been asking for.
Right.
And it felt great to be able to support you in whatever way, and to also make clear to the, sort of supportive white women in the audience, like, still not about us.
Yeah. I mean, my ideal for that situation. So if my publishing team had not been in the front, I would have come out and just be like, this is a great example. Like Alison having to facilitate this in order for this event to happen. It's like a great example of what goes on throughout my book, and just the ways that whiteness presents, and the ways that Black women, yes, conform our bodies and ourselves, in order to just be accepted or have a sense of safety and survive here. And like, look at this funny dynamic and what the copy editor letter had. Like, it could have been just like a very fun conversation about ridiculousness and awkwardness, which of course I love. But because the team was there, like, it just didn't seem like the move, at least for me. And I don't like that. I, again, like, realize that is in itself like conforming again. I didn't ask to do, the book. They asked me to do it. They should want me to be like my full authentic self. And I don't remember much of what we said during the discussion, but of course I remember the end. In every talk I've ever been to, there's that moment where you decide to take one last question. And it was a Black woman. So, we were at time, but it was like, I'm going to let, her ask a question. And she was like, wow, you in this writing process, you were asked to write this book. I can only imagine like how supportive your editor and publishing team were. Can you just tell us a bit about that? And before I got the chance to answer, like, what went on for you in that moment?
So Jessica, I couldn't not laugh is what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In terms of the absurdity of the situation, knowing what the process had been like, knowing what the promises had been, knowing what the sort of overarching societal promises had been after 2020, knowing all of that. And then it just comes down to the absurd letter from this copy editor being a perfect, like, I don't know what to do. So I did snicker. I snickered and I continued to snicker. I snickered and awkwardly sat next to you while you attempted to answer the conversation. And I stopped performing politeness in any way and just laughed and giggled, chuckled to myself. Very helpful, professional. Yeah.
At one point, I remember looking over to you as you're laughing, as I'm trying to answer, this question. And I'm like, I give you a look and you're like, I'm sorry, I can't stop thinking about that doll.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't.
I can't.
I can't. That's all that's in my head.
It's just replaying over and over again. Yes. With that, we wrapped, and the plan had been for the publishing team and my agent to all go out just for a drink afterwards, and you were going to come, and they were so excited to meet you. And they stuck around for, I don't know, maybe like 3 minutes, and then we're like, so many people here, Jessica, you're talking to people. We're just going to let you, do that, and we're going to head out. And so it was this moment that was going to be like celebratory. We asked you to write this book. Here it is. Here's your event. Let's go get drinks. And they were like, cool. See you never. I was like, all right. So this is just another, we're not even going to pretend. I don't know. What do you think it is, Alison? Like, it's very easy for me to say that I was their 2020 social justice, health disparities, Black Lives Matter acquisition. And I think it doesn't have to be. That could just be it. But is there anything greater at play that I'm missing? The level of weirdness and like the performing, but then deciding not to perform, like, just seemed exceptional. I don't know.
I can't tell whether, because I know so little about the publishing industry and what is expected, I don't even really know what is expected within my industry from agents and managers and people that I'm professionally associated with. because I am someone who does not feel the need to, it's not that I don't feel the need to, it's that I don't understand why we pretend to be friends. In the context of this one especially, it only felt odd given that there had been the promise of it.
Yeah.
If I make plans with a professional colleague, then that is expected to come through. Also, people are tired, but I don't know whether it had anything to do with, I think it was just sort of the experience writ large of, here's this thing, we're going to support you. We're going to take you for drinks. We're going to celebrate you. When in actual fact, everybody's a little tired.
That's it. I love that. They have a long drive or, that's perfect. I love it. You mentioned your industry, and I remember distinctly taking a walk, and it was one of the many times where I was just like, I don't understand like how people are making promises and saying they're going to do things and just flat out not doing them, and then talking to me like I'm confused. I'm like, I really heard, I took notes, and then this is where we are, and you were like, oh yes, that is marketing. And I was wondering if you could just break down a bit what marketing language sounds like, because you had it and I was laughing.
Yeah, well, it's just basically, there's a lot of circling back. We're going to put a pin in that one for now, but we're going to circle back to that later. There's a whole vibe to this other piece that we're considering. We're putting you forward to a lot of different, really interesting stuff. A lot of them are long lead, but there's some shorter term stuff right now. We feel like you can really up the game on your own socials and like,
yeah.
And at the end of the day, most of it comes to nothing. And this also isn't all the fault of marketing folks, as it is vast changes in the industry, in every industry. Well, just in terms of there are no publications anymore. Magazines are dead. People don't pay for editorial photography. They're not paying for journalists to interview you. It's mostly freelance. It's very few outlets actually to nudge in any way. I don't think many people are quite sure how to market anything at this point.
Yeah.
Not to say that the language and bullshittery is not the vast majority of marketing, as I understand it. That's what marketing is. And at the same time, there are shifting dynamics that I still don't think people whose job it is to comprehend it fully comprehend.
No, that's really interesting, because something that I was told over and over again is that like when I would ask, how do I market this book? People would say like, we don't know how books sell anymore. And I was like, that is not helpful. And then you're mad at me because I'm not marketing, a book, or it's not selling like the gazillion thousands that you expected. And like, but you didn't know. And I certainly don't know. So we're just all winging it together.
When there is a presumption of some sort of professional knowledge, it is unfortunate to then be told this was all, you just didn't utilize your followers enough.
Yes. Yeah.
Or whatever the case may be, where you're like, but I didn't know how, and neither did you. And you're right, engagement. And it's also just, I don't know that the audience of it was ever sort of discovered in any real enough way. Like, where was Oprah's blurb?
Well, that was, another part of it. I was told 100 times, people under 30 don't buy books. And I'm like, my Instagram following is like a lot of people under 30. And was told like from that point, like older middle-aged Black women want to hear about weathering. And I was like, weathering is not in my book.
Yeah.
It's just like, that is not something that I'm talking about there. So yeah, it was an experience. I would love to write a book about writing a book, like what to expect when you're expecting. Because I looked for them. They don't exist. Like what does this look like? It was a journey. What can we say was fun and funny about all of this?
I was just remembering when we first got to our seats to do our Q&A discussion thing, your microphone didn't work. Do you remember this? And that's how we opened, was that my microphone worked and yours was malfunctioning.
Yes.
Which felt like the perfect illustration for what we were all doing there in that room. Just
whose voices are heard.
Whose voices are literally able to be heard or amplified in any literal or figurative sense. That was the opener, dude.
Wild. That's true. No, I completely. There are portions that I have blocked out, and that was one of them. But I'm glad you, wrap around that one. I had a great time celebrating. Like, I had 4 like multiple tentacles of friends like that had no overlap before this experience. So being able to take a short trip with you, Shayna, Amy, and Lexi was just super great because the 4 of you had been there and just listened to me so many times. And I'm sure we're like, this happened last week, but Jessica, you're telling us again, it's happening this week. And I don't remember last week because last week was last week. And I'm just like, how is this happening this week? And yes, a celebration of you all for just like answering a text was something that this project would not have been possible without. So yeah, glad I met you in 2020 and so grateful that you were around in 2023 for this book and continue to be my friend.
And now it's important that we continue our Food Friends text chain with important items like Donut Fridays.
A quick clarification. This Food Friends group chat is me, Alison, Amy, the food engineer, and Shayna, the literal blue ribbon baker.
Essential things.
Absolutely. Yes. How you all have recipes that you share, and I just talk about what I eat. I think I'm only in that chat because I am a professional in the field. That's really all that I will bring to that. I eat donuts. I don't bake anything. You all are amazing and should actually be on Nailed It versus me who just, wants to be. Maybe you are the Great British Bake Off and I'm the Nailed It of the group.
Could we talk about the time that you had a Zoom birthday party and I'd never seen Nailed It and didn't and only finally watched an episode like this past year and texted you to be like, oh, I get it now.
Yes. Let's break down what happened. So late 2020, I turned like 38. It was the first Zoom birthday. I was like, we're still going to do something fun. Everybody needs joy. Alice is my new friend. I'm going to invite her and my other friends to make a unicorn cake all in our own kitchens. And we have, however, 90 minutes or 2 hours to make this beautiful unicorn cake. And Alison, yes, I can't wait to be there. And then, Alison, what happened?
Well, I ended up not being at home. I was at my father-in-law's house and my kid was there. I had actually bought fondant for the occasion.
Yeah.
I'd never worked with before. I mean, I had really attempted to be ready for this, but I had the expectation that everyone was a genius baker and that this was just something that everybody was just like, oh yeah, easy. Which with Amy and Shayna is not unbelievable. Amy had different bowls. There was dye going on with all the different batters. It was, we just made a funfetti cake over Zoom.
Yes. You bought, I think, a cake tin that was a unicorn, right? So in theory, you made a unicorn cake.
I don't even know, man. It was.
Yeah, I
didn't understand the assignment at all. And also didn't understand that no one was going to make anything that looked remotely like the picture.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing
like it. Absolutely nothing. No one was getting there. They were going to be lumps of mostly edible things with lots of fancy decorations.
With a lot of glitter.
Yeah.
So yes, people had golden unicorn horns. Yeah, the expectation was that we would laugh a lot. But what I remember is, Alison, you introduce yourself to the group and you're like, okay. And then you like go and put your cake in the oven. It comes out and you're like, okay, thanks everyone. Goodbye.
I also had a toddler. Had a toddler who was not that interested in a Zoom birthday party, sadly.
That makes sense.
But it was it was something that I would have liked, and also something I would have liked far more this year, now knowing what Nailed It is, which is a fantastic program. Love it.
Yes.
Yes.
Highly recommend.
Highly recommend.
When is your 40th birthday?
2 years-ish.
We should not wait that long to have another Nailed It party.
Nailed It party. Yeah. Yeah.
We totally keep it going.
We should. No, now that I know what it is, it'll be great.
What should we make? What kind of animal?
I think we should try. My friend just did this for Christmas. She's a very good baker. She made a bûche de Noël, which is like the branch. And then she made little like macaron, like mushroom guys. Okay. And I feel like a chocolate log smeared with like...
I'm excited to see where this goes. Okay, a chocolate log. That's where we are. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's rolling involved. So you have like the Swiss roll kind of thing.
Yes.
I have to ice the whole thing and make bark. But it also doesn't involve fondant. And I feel like some of us might be able to really excel or make giant pea cakes. Either way, it's a win.
We can make fondant animals, woodland animals for this.
Wonderful. Yes. Yeah.
Log that would go with mushrooms and logs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just make a lot of fondant pigs. It'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Okay.
All right. I'm excited. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. To be continued, as always. I warned you, it was an awkward, wild, absurd ride. After returning from that New York book event, my dad called. I told him how the event with Alison went and that she couldn't contain her laughter. I told him that I'd returned home to an email from the publisher with a recommitment to publicity after that bookstore event. My dad said, "Good job, Alison," because that's the kind of family we are. Because of everything that happened after turning in my manuscript, it took me a while to love It's Always Been Ours as much as I really needed to, and as much as my readers have told me they do. I've turned a much needed corner and will be back to giving the book the attention it always deserved. It really has always been ours. Shayna, Ifashina, Chef Fresh, and I recently joined Larry, another person I interviewed for the book, for a webinar for NAFA about rewriting the body narratives of Black people, and I'll link to NAFA's YouTube channel in the show notes if you'd like to take a look. In next week's episode, you'll hear from Chrissy King, author of The Body Liberation Project, how understanding racism and diet culture helps cultivate joy and build collective freedom. She published through Tiny Reparations, a Black-led publisher, and we compare and contrast our experiences. I ask her about her book, her writing, and what's next for her. We have a great time chatting about not settling in relationships and living our best child-free lives. Alison, since you're here, can you tell people to rate and review it and make it awkward? Oh, and join the Patreon.
Okay, yes. No, it's going good. It's going good. I'm going to get it. Hey, everyone. The best way to support this show is to join the Patreon or rate it, review it, give it 5 million stars, and continue to make it awkward, friends. Make it awkward. Do it. Just like me. I'm a professional awkwarder.
This has been Making It Awkward. I'm Jessica Wilson. You can watch this episode on YouTube and Spotify. This is a production of The Body Politic and is supported by Patreon members, my book, It's Always Been Ours, and the legacy of Sacramento Outboard Services. All of the social media clips you see here are done by Jen Jacobs, who edits and mixes the show, and who is also an amazing brainstorming buddy.